Hi, I'm Mike Baker, and welcome to National Arts. In his lifetime, Leo Tolstoy's life and his philosophies were as celebrated as his works of literature. Few knew, however, of the troubled home life endured by his wife and 11 children. Now, playwright Leon Katz has painted a moving portrait of the final days of Leo Tolstoy titled Sonya, with Julie Harris in the lead role and directed by the Phoenix Theater Company's Bram Lewis.
And your whole heart turned to me, and sunny sky, you say. At that moment, we were one.
It was a marriage, you say, maybe outside of heaven. It wasn't quite perfect. It never reached a kind of perfection that they would both have dreamed about, but they were, in a way, suited. And I always think of when he was courting her, the family thought, oh, it was the oldest daughter. And in those times, the oldest daughter was supposed to be the first married. So the Dr. Bears and his wife, who had been a friend of Tolstoy's before she married, thought it was their oldest daughter that he was courting. And the Count had been a friend for many years and had seen these little girls growing up. But in fact, it was the middle daughter, Sonya, who caught his eye. And to test her, it was like a test before. He said, if I don't ask her today, I'll kill myself. This is the end. I'm so obsessed with this idea of this young woman. And he wrote down a message, the words, only the first letter of each word. It was about 12 letters. And said, what to her, Sonya? What does that mean? She looked at it and read it perfectly. Perfectly. So I said, she was in this, because her love for him had been growing, even though she knew her sister wanted him as a husband. But Sonya absolutely adored him. And Sonya was an incipient writer. She had a teacher's certificate at that time, so she could have gone on teaching, and she could have written stories, and in fact she did write some children's stories, and she was considered to be very good.
You see her as a literary figure, don't you?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so her fascination for this man and her deep devotion for what he did as a novelist was extraordinary. And then the great trial for them both came when he had this religious conversion and, like the true Christ, would live in poverty and chastity. And
you have a certain fascination with that search that he went through, and in a way, you've done a little bit of that in your life, haven't you?
Well, I haven't done it like anywhere.
Like Tolstoy.
No, not Tolstoy. I haven't given up anything for it. I'm always on the verge of that. I say, because Mother Teresa is a very important world figure to me, and I admire and love her, and really would like to do that for my life. I'd like to say, yes, just give away everything and just help people. And somehow God will provide. You see, Sonya said, yes, but we have 13 children. What, or 9 children, 10 children, who's going to take care of them? Well, if she had been able to, with her whole heart, go over to his thinking, somehow God provides.
And there was that yearning in his face, and that pure longing that for all of us, his family and friends, to join him in his life's work, because it was torment. Do you remember how it tormented him, that those who were closest to him, those whom he held dearest in his heart, had not yet found it in their hearts to give?
Yes, Duchamp. Yes, I remember. We heard all that many times.
I see a picture of her when I think of her in my mind. I see her nursing a child, the candle or the kerosene lamp, and copying the manuscripts while the baby's nursing. That was her dual role. And she copied them when nobody else could decipher his writing, because he would write and then write this way, and then in the margins and the arrows for here, and she knew what he meant, and copied it very carefully, and would put it on his desk the next morning, and then he would rework it, so she would copy the next page all over again.
Although it's not really said, I get the feeling that Sonya was very intent upon preserving his legacy. That's perhaps why she was so insistent that she know where the manuscripts are. Yes. She knew that there were many enemies of the state just outside this cabin that would willingly destroy his product and his image.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
It was more that than the will and the money, wasn't it?
Yes, absolutely, yes. And it's wonderful that it was preserved, because he did have so many enemies. She was allowed to stay in the house by the Bolsheviks after the revolution, and Sasha went to the front as a nurse after Tolstoy died, and Sonya was allowed to stay in the house at Yasnaya Polyana.
Sorry. Psycho! Your greed for all his money.
There's a price. There's a price to be paid for taking the bread out of the mouths of my children. I, you say, have made us enemies, and you can't fathom why. What is the matter with Sonya Andreevna? I'll tell you what's wrong with this mad woman. She's been watching her husband developing a repulsive, revolting, senile crush on Chertkov. She's been suffering agony in her own home, watching you sit on the sofa next to him, the two of you whispering away, knees touching knees, happy lovers, lost in their own intimacy. That's what's the matter with her! Chertkov keeping us apart, Chertkov using my Lovage to reach a position in life that he could never reach, ever!
The very difficult exchange that you have with his chief disciple,
Yes.
Is that in a way a recreation of some of the pain and angst that you may have suffered at the hands of Tolstoy? Is that a recreation of one of those very dramatic parting scenes?
Oh, I think so. The night that he left was and the last months of their life together was this awful. She couldn't help herself. They would have a calm day, and then she would say, "But what about the diaries? I should have them," and bring the whole thing up again. And he would say, "Please leave me alone." And then she wouldn't. She'd say, "But what's good?" She kept after him and after him. So it was real torment. And it's the way Leon has written that scene. She goes, because of her extreme jealousy, she goes in and out of this hysterical, sometimes Chertkov becomes Lovage to her. And she almost believes she's talking to him. So it is all that mixed up in it. But Chertkov didn't fool Sonya. He came into their lives, and she discovered in a few months that he was not what he seemed. And she hated him being there, hated him taking everything away from her.
This war within, where on the one hand he could communicate this beautiful sensuality in his writing, and then enter something later in the evening in the diary saying that he needed to rid himself of this sensuality, this lust.
Yeah, yes. But Gandhi said that too.
That's exemplified in the play so beautifully.
And they were, I was watching a program on the Shakers, a last community, 3 men and 3 women, and they're praying for new members to come because they're celibate. Well, if you're celibate, you die out. That's the last Shaker community in this country, and unless some new member comes and says, "I want to join you," there won't be any more. When they go there, that's it. I don't totally believe that. I think celibacy for a religious order is a powerful commitment and worthy to be something worthy to be honored, because I think if you have children and family and lovers and then your vision becomes clouded, I think, from the path of Christ, I suppose, or Gandhi or Muhammad or any of those great religious leaders.
I know you have an admiration for Tolstoy's search for universal love.
Yes. Yes. Makes me weep because I think that's the only solution. Love is the only solution. It's a truth that you don't seek revenge. You don't. You turn the other cheek. You take it all.
And somehow you grow from that experience.
Oh, absolutely. The other way is just it's a dead end, I think.
Yes, I know, Duchamp. You are a saint, and I'm not. I mean, I love him, yes, but those words coming out of his mouth and the servants with white gloves pouring his dish of porridge, and he's sitting there with that holy look in his peasant shirt and the boots he made for himself, and those words telling us we must all right now throw away everything and give up the life we knew, the terrible sin of the life we knew. No, those words did not move me.
In seeing your wonderful play, I get the impression that Tolstoy's struggle may not have been as much with Sonya, perhaps the church and the state, as it was with himself.
Enormously so. It was an enormous struggle, and it was a torment to him. What I find so fascinating about this entire environment of people is that all of them are tormented by their ambivalence. And every person in the family, Sonya certainly, and Tolstoy, and the disciples, all were subjected to exactly the same, almost impossible situation. And the situation was characteristically that they felt drawn to two opposite things, but drawn so much to those things that because of the fact that they all had a certain integrity in themselves, they could not bear to live with the ambivalence. See? So they tried to resolve it. Each one tries to resolve it. At the end of the play, Sonya does. In her life, she did not, but in the play, she does. See? And she resolves it by discovering, or at least feeling that she's discovered what it is that was at the very bottom of their what one calls superficially their love. See? But that's a very complex thing, and it's not simply that they are in love. See? It's enormously complex. And the quality of love that they gave to one another is matched by the quality of indifference that lay at the bottom of it, the indifference to the soul of the other person.
In drafting this play, you've imbued it with the beautiful poetry, almost from the mind of Tolstoy.
Oh, yes. Well, he's the guiding spirit. There's no doubt about that. I love Tolstoy. I loved him ever since I read War and Peace. It was an overwhelming experience for me. I think still it's the greatest book I ever read. And I read the Bible, and I think it has meant more to me, as a matter of fact.
Well, speaking of the Bible, that was Tolstoy's guidance, wasn't it? Matthew 5, was it verse 39?
Yes, precisely. And the belief itself is profound. It's so profound that it's simple. And that is the thing that made it so impossible to be endured. And he himself felt, and I think I quite agree, that the simplicity of what his belief matched precisely the simplicity of Christ's belief, and that they are in accord, as none of the institutions or the sects that have grown out of Christianity are in accord with Matthew, or with his sense of the essence of Christ.
The temple is within.
The temple is within. The kingdom of God is within you. Absolutely, yeah. That's his teaching, and it's a profound teaching. In fact, I think about as profound as religion can get.
He seems to always have been also at war with the whole concept of transference from mind to pen, that he even said one time that he left some of his life in the inkwell.
Mm-hmm. One thing that's fascinating about Anna Karenina, he puts himself into the book in the character of Levin, and says at the beginning of the book, all happy families are alike, and all unhappy families are multifarious, are very different. Well, Levin, he's the man who has a happy marriage with Kitty. The story of his proposing to Kitty is really a recollection of his proposal to Sonya. Well, he splits himself in two, in effect. The sensuality that he feels, the overwhelming sensuality that was so shocking to Sonya when the first time they had a sexual encounter. That's all in the story of Anna and Vronsky. The other part of him is in the other. So he's really in both parts of the book. Well, how much is missing of Tolstoy in that? What is missing is what he subsequently became. He turned on Anna Karenina, on the novel itself, and he subsequently said, "Oh, I have no interest in that book. What is it but the story of a fallen woman? Nothing more," you see. But then he writes Resurrection. It's a very great book, to be sure, but it does not compare in its insights, in its feel for humanity with the two earlier novels. But he's gained a great deal. The ambivalence is always there.
He doesn't even know I'm here.
But he can't be told, Mama. You understood that.
What is it you understand? His wife has come to him and no one has told him. I'm here and no one has told him.
You still don't
no,
shout,
no,
Mama.
not be still. Leovage, I'm here.
Nurse, come
I'm
quick.
here.
Mama, go with the nurse.
Tell him,
Go now.
he must know.
There's so many marvelous directorial touches that go on here. You're juggling a great many actors on stage. They each have to have their own personalities. You've drawn the wonderful marginal line here with the train tracks. And you've been very careful when people pass from one side of the tracks to the other. There are all these marvelous directorial touches here.
Well, I guess that's the virtue of being in a position as a producer, knowing that I'm hiring myself as a director, because I saw this project coming together with enough time to guarantee us the chance to fulfill it. That meant that in the first day of rehearsal, I requested that our tech department put train tracks down in the rehearsal room, so that just the way that people were moving in rehearsal was already informed by the presence of obstacles. And I said to them, this play is about obstacles. There will be obstacles at every turn, and it begins with the floor. And the floor is where the battle lines are drawn. So to rehearse with that extra information informs a performance in subtle ways that gives you an advantage.
It is a conflict, isn't it, that's ongoing between the two forces.
I said to the designer, Campbell Baird, this exquisite, brilliant designer, Campbell, who's had a very fabulous career in the theater, and I'm so lucky to have him, that to me there were two icons, and I chose the word knowing its Russian meanings as well, that we had the train, which she had borrowed through the Tsar and Tsarina, and the simple peasant's cottage. And if anything represented the Countess in her luxuriance and her energy and her unstoppable presence, and the simplicity of the cottage, which is Leo, in a way it's the reversal of the old male-female cliche. Mm-hmm. And trains were very prominent in Leo's writing, and so we had those two things to balance. So I said, really, I don't want this to be a hyper-realistic set. I want it to be three pieces, the train, the cottage, and the tracks. And the rest we'll imagine.
The last stopover.
The last
leaving this
stopover.
world. The lowest common denominator.
There's something so basic about train stations. Mm-hmm. There's something mystical. There's something sad. There's something kind of desolate. There's something which has great possibility and spiritual depth. I mean, in this country, you look at the literature from Woody Guthrie on about trains and, the whole life of the hobo and the free spirit. I mean, trains are, just to begin with, a wonderful place for a play to be anchored and rooted. The first sound is a train whistle. The last sound is a train whistle.
And I noticed that you pick a common ground between these two warring forces when you have the burial and the final scene in center ground.
To me, Leon's play is very much, everyone goes a little crazy through the whole play, but there are no heroes or villains. No matter how darkly drawn some moments and antagonisms in the play appear, we must wind up with an uneasy middle ground that's been earned.
I get the feeling that maybe many of the events that are taking place on the stage are coming out of his mind, that in essence this play has been turned inside out, and that we're really inside the house with him.
Oh, that's wonderful. I hope so. As I think the presence of everybody, that man lying there, it affects everyone.
You're a real history and biography buff, so it would only seem natural that this would be the kind of role that you would always blossom in.
Well, I love doing the research and the studying about a person. And I've done, you know, Charlotte Bronte and Emily Dickinson, Isak Dinesen, Mary Lincoln. Joan of Arc, I did Anoï's play The Lark, L'Alouette. I was saying to someone that there is even research that you can read about Joan. Now you can read the whole trial in English. So, you know, that famous, when there was in church, there was a great question of whether they should ask her this particular question, are you in a state of grace? And they kept putting it off, asking her. And when they finally did ask her, she said, if I am not, may God bring me to it. If I am, may God keep me in it. And Shaw's used that in his play. And it's the perfect answer in Anoï. It's the perfect answer, isn't it?
It touches the spirit, the real spirit.
Yes. So, yes, I love historical, real people. But I like fictional people too.
Your employees, that is your duty, to creep about the kingdom with a look of false interest, guidebook in hand, and then pounce on them before the people in their charge. That is how you conceive your duty, to humiliate subordinates.
This is a sidetrack.
It is not, it really is not.
A total sidetrack, and you know it. My behavior is not the issue here. Yours is what we are discussing. Is that which needs explaining. You will report tomorrow afternoon at my office in London.
It wasn't long ago that you did Lettice Lovage.
Yes.
A beautiful performance, and I know that you became fast friends with Roberta Maxwell, and you still keep in touch.
Yes, we do, yes.
That was a wonderful transition when you look at one's character, how you were called upon to grow in strength as the production ensued.
Yes. That's a wonderful play by Peter Schaffer, and an extraordinary part. I never asked Peter how that came to him, but I think it must be a mixture because he's worked with Maggie Smith and she was the inspiration for Lettice.
You were just a young girl when you actually took the stage for the first time, and you came home after a production and you told your parents, this is my life. Is that true?
I can't remember my conversation with my parents, but I think it was a Christmas play at school, and people were very moved by the story. It was about the little the miracle of that Christmas night when the little juggler, the juggler of Notre Dame, which everybody says, oh, she did the Hunchback of Notre Dame. No, it was the juggler, and people were very moved by that, and I found it a wonderful feeling to be at the center of a story that was moving to people. So I'm not sure that I even verbalized it to my mother and father, that I said, but how wonderful I guess that I love doing this. And then I think the next year or so I did go to a Perry Mansfield theater workshop in the summertime in Colorado and studied acting and dance.
You said that A Member of the Wedding was a very big break for you.
Yes.
Harold Clurman actually said, after having worked with you, that you were a nun, the church is your stage.
I think his wife Stella Adler said that about. She came to see me in a play, A Shot in the Dark, I think, that Harold had directed. And Stella was a great acting teacher and a wonderful actress. And she looked at me and she was very dramatic. She said, oh, Julie, you're a nun of the theater. So I think Harold sort of took that up.
Your favorite pastimes, of course, you love to read, you love to research, you like walking, you love swimming,
yes.
And waiting for your next play.
Yes, I love to work, and it'll be interesting to see what comes up next.
Many things, I'm sure.
Well, I did a recording with Amy Irving and Harris Yulin of Atul Fugar's play, the Road to Mecca. And I hope I'm going to be doing that next winter.
Oh, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Here is the vein. One cut. Here, like Lovage. Yeah.
What was the genesis of the Phoenix Theater Company?
Well, the Phoenix Theater really was born thanks to another Phoenix Theater Company. And I have to talk about them before I can talk about me and this Phoenix. In 1953, Norris Houghton and T. Edward Hamilton decided that they wanted to get away from Broadway. And so they invited people like Helen Hayes and Robert Ryan and eventually Eva Le Gallienne and Sir Tyrone Guthrie and some of the greatest theater people of the time to come and join them off Broadway in Maurice Schwartz's old Second Avenue Theater down on 11th Street. And it was really the beginnings of what came to be known as off-Broadway. Today, the most interesting work that happens in the city really is because of off-Broadway. So I guess in honoring their history, and because a phoenix coming from a phoenix seemed to be mythically appropriate, if not historically appropriate, I grew up knowing Nori and seeing some of the great productions that they had done, and their history meant a great deal to me. I also felt that Manhattan was, from a developmental point of view, almost dead. It was almost impossible to start up yet another company in Manhattan. There was no place to build something brand new. So I went, instead of off-Broadway, I went off Manhattan, as it were, looked around and found that New Jersey has many successful equity companies, so too Connecticut. But in Westchester, there had been 17 professional companies that had come and gone in the 15-year period preceding our history. So that seemed like a really good challenge. Everyone told me, don't come here. In the early 60s, when the American theater movement was expanding away from Broadway, there were 4 theaters regionally across the country that really had any history as regional theater. In the next 30 years, there were over 400 theaters that sprung up. It was an extraordinary expansion. And the only place that had slept through that revolution like Rip Van Winkle was Westchester County. So it seemed like a great place to come.
The life and works of a great artist can impact millions for centuries to come. Leo Tolstoy was no exception. Until next time, remember, art was meant to be appreciated, so you be a part of it.